As you're aware, I'm a trained engineer. I have MNg from the Imperial College in London. Subsequently, I also earned a Ph.D. in electrical engineering from the University of Bath, UK. I then joined a telecom startup in the UK, which was manufacturing miniature base stations as an engineer. And spent a few years there, then also joined an operator before I subsequently returned to Nigeria to assume my first leadership role as the Chief Technology Officer of payment startup. I spent just under 2 years at that startup before I joined the Nigerian Interbank Settlement System as the Executive Director for technology and operations. So I'd say that was my first real foray into leadership within the African context. It was a very challenging role with huge responsibility, as I was responsible for technology and operations for the national switch of Nigeria. So every single instant payment, or majority of the instant payments at the time, every single POS transaction was running through our platforms. I spent 4 years there. I was also on the board before I joined. I was appointed to become the executive vice chairman of the Nigerian Communications Commission. Now, this was a journey of just under 20 years. And it took me through multiple industries, but I had experience working with my junior life of being an enterprise software developer. I also had experience as an entrepreneur, and of course, experience as an executive within the National Payments, which was policy government, before I eventually ended up as the executive vice chairman of the NCC, which is 100% government. So I think that diverse set of experiences, both within the country, outside the country, private sector, public sector, established companies, startup companies, gave me a real good grounding in the different aspects of what I would be facing as a regulator today, because I regulate both the small and the big. And in terms of my philosophy and approach, again, I would go back to my experience, because as an entrepreneur, I had to be very prudent. Every single kobo or cent mattered. And we had to be accountable to our investors as well. And likewise, working in this, which was quasi-government, we had a board, but we also had to be accountable to the board, which was chaired by the CBN and a number of bank MDs. So coming here to NCC, I think I took that same approach of making transparency my watchword, both towards the public and towards the industry. Because as a regulator, we regulate two sides we work for two sides of the market, the industry and the consumers. The consumers, we have to ensure we get value for money, and the industry, we need to make sure that there's a level playing field. And the best way for you to ensure consumers get value for money is to ensure that there's transparency towards the service being provided by the market. And of course, the best way to make the industry competitive over and beyond providing the regulatory tools is to ensure that there's transparency so that investors can see how the industry as a whole is performing, but also who are the best performers in the industry, so that they can also put their investments there, and also where are the gaps, so that they can also explore the opportunities from this gap, which then hopefully will translate to value to the consumers as well. Thank you very much. When I assumed office in October 2023, the government had just made two bold but very necessary macroeconomic reforms, which impacted all sectors, not just the telecommunications sector. specifically the removal of subsidies, and also the unification of the FX rates. Now, the industry, I'd say, was in a state of stability. It wasn't necessarily growing, but these macroeconomic reforms had actually exposed some of the weaknesses. This is an industry that requires continuous and increasing investments to meet the increasing demand from our consumers, and also the growth in the number of consumers. So in terms of our strategic vision and plans, I set out and made it very clear our three key stakeholders via our act. We are an economic regulator. So we have the industry on one side, who are made up of investors and operators. And the investors are more or less looking to invest in these operators and ensure they get some form of return on investment. And it goes without saying, if there's no return on investment, then it's unlikely that we're going to see any investment in the industry. Then on the other hand, you have the consumers who are looking to get the best quality service at the best price. And the principle of economic regulation is that we have enough players on the industry side who are competing to ensure that they provide the best service to the consumers. And of course, ourselves at the NCC are in the middle acting as a referee. Now, with this macroeconomic reforms, as I mentioned, it really exposed the fact that investments weren't really growing at the rate to absorb any shocks in terms of the macroeconomic situation. So I set out and I laid out very key and clear priorities for our key stakeholders. The government, on one side, is looking to us to enable other sectors, because we are now no longer just a sector providing connectivity for people. We're a sector which is enabling other sectors. I mean, the digital payment sector is one very key example. We saw the revolution there in mobile payments, and of course, payments across enterprises. So the government is really looking for us to be an enabler and, of course, grow the industry so that they can generate revenue from taxes. And the industry is also looking for us to make it attractive so that foreign investment can come in. And like I said, the consumers looking for the best value for money. So we have a situation where how do we restore consumer investor confidence? So we had to take a difficult decision, amongst other things, to approve tariffs being increased, but also we had to also take other measures to clean up some of the issues in-house. So I mentioned a few intra-industry debts. So there was a lot of interconnect debt. Of course, inter-industry debt, specifically the USSD issue we had with the banks. Then on the consumer side also, we had to analyze some of the key trends in consumer complaints. The first one was quality of service, goes without saying, issues with perception of data depletion, which we're tackling through sensitization campaigns, and failed top-ups, which we're also tackling by collaboration with Central Bank of Nigeria. So pursuant to Section 5 of the NCA 2003, the governing board of the NCC consists of 9 commissioners, 5 of which are non-executive commissioners, 3 executive commissioners, including myself, and the chairman. So the board is appointed by the president based on the recommendation of the Honorable Minister of Communications, Innovation and Digital Economy. This structure provides oversight via committees, as you'd expect in any normal board, and ensures, for me, it ensures balanced deliberations, helps me to establish a paraffin-like strategy. And also this board is made up of the experienced individuals, both from the public and private sector. So they're also like guiding, a set of guiding consultants to help us drive have a mandate in the industry. I think that's tricky but explainable question. Building upon my previous results, like I said, it's all about balancing interests. So you brought in a third player here, which is government. And it's the same thing. It's about transparency. It's about understanding what they want and being transparent in terms of how we go about it, how we're going about it, and how we're making progress. Luckily, with this administration, we now have a central delivery reporting unit, which has a special advisor of the president heading it. So through that delivery unit, we jointly agree our deliveries and our timelines based on, of course, policy direction and also our mandate as enshrined in the Act. So I think it's, for me, it's about, it comes back to the transparency. Everybody has an interest. Consumers, like I said, their interest is good service at the best possible price. The industry are basically driven by investments, so they need to make sure that those investments deliver a return on investment. And of course, the government has made promises to its citizens and also has a larger vision for the country. So it's about understanding everybody's interest and being transparent about how you're going about it and what progress you're making. I think it has to do with the tariff. It probably is the tariff adjustments that happened earlier in this year. Now, why do I say that? And some people might say it's positive, and some people might say it's negative. And again, it's about balancing interests. Now, recall I mentioned to you that we're an economic regulator. This is enshrined in the Act. An economic regulation was what took us from 500,000 lines in the early 2000s, and in less than a decade, we had about 33 million Nigerians connected and enjoying better services at an affordable rate. And you recall also, this is the one industry that we've actually seen prices drop. When this industry started, we were about 50 naira per minute. And now, even with the tariff adjustment, I think the maximum per minute rate is about 18 naira. Now, why do I say this is the most impactful regulatory intervention I've made in the 2 years? An industry which is under economic regulation requires investments. Now, without investments, we are not going to be able to build the necessary infrastructure for us to deliver on the interests of our three stakeholders. One, starting with the industry, if they don't invest, the infrastructure is going to become obsolete. Two, if the infrastructure is obsolete, consumers are not going to be happy because they're not going to get the best service. And of course, when you're not happy, the only reason why you spend money is because you don't have an alternative. And three, on the government side as well, they want us to be enablers to other sectors. But if there's no infrastructure investment to meet up with the demands of these other sectors and consumers, then we're not going to be able to deliver on anything. So if we looked at the data in terms of foreign investment coming into the sector, and I think it had, at best would say it had flattened. And this was a clear indication that investors were not looking at the sector as being attractive anymore. So you could say it was a failure of economic regulation. So what we had to do was go back to the principles which made this sector very impactful to the nation. And those principles are very simple and very clear and enshrined in the NCA 2003. i.e., one, service delivery and the cost of those services should be cost reflective. I can't remember the specific section of the Act, but it is very, very clearly stated that tariffs should be cost reflective. And number two, It also said the NCC should approve tariffs. But if you read that in isolation, it actually sounds like the NCC is involved in price control. But no, it is in the context of competition. So when we approve tariffs, it is to check for anti-competitive behavior, and specifically around two areas. One, so that the industry doesn't gang up and form a cartel. And two, a player in the industry does not leverage a competitive advantage to cross-subsidize services and undercut others in the industry. So we had to go back to those principles, which I think unfortunately over the past decade, we had deviated from, whether it is due to misunderstandings or other reasons which the government government of the day felt to deviate from those principles. But the price of everything has gone up, even before these macroeconomic reforms. But this was a sector that was not even adjusting for inflation. So what we were doing was actually slowly killing the sector. So that one intervention in February, whereby we allowed for movement in tariffs, not because we are price control, but because we needed to go back to economic regulation. And that simple act has now restored, or began to restore, investor confidence. And what does that translate to? We're now seeing the investments come back. I'm sure you've seen in the news some of the big players making commitments to investments. And this is true because we verified it. And this year we're looking at commitments of over $1 billion already, compared to last year, which was less than half of that, and the year below, which was also at similar levels. So despite even the devaluation of the currency, we're seeing in dollar terms a slight increase now in investment, which is an indication of investor confidence coming back, which is now showing that we're going back to economic regulation. And in the long run, what this is going to do is that consumers are going to get better service, and the government is also going to be able to get other sectors being enabled by the industry. Not to sound like a broken record, I'm going to come back to transparency and accountability. So again, on the industry side, we're going to release the first ever spectrum roadmap for Nigeria. This is going to clearly define how we intend to manage our limited spectrum resources for the next 5 years. They're also going to be releasing a cybersecurity framework for the industry. Now, as the foundation of the digital economy, it's very important that the security starts at that layer. Then there's also the corporate governance guidelines, which we have released, and we're about to start operationalizing it. Why that is important is because this industry is so critical to the future of Nigeria, which means that every important player in this industry, we need to ensure sustainability in terms of being a growing concern. And of course, one of the best ways to do that is to ensure very strong corporate governance. And we have data to support that in our industry. The stronger the corporate governance, the better financial performance, service performance, and also compliance to regulation. Then on the consumer side, I've already mentioned a number of initiatives. We mentioned some of them again. So we have the major incident reporting, both on our portal and direct to the consumers. We have the tariff simplification, whereby all operators are mandated now to disclose the tariff structure, that's cost per megabyte, cost per minute, cost per SMS, in a uniform way, so that's easy to compare. And the one I'm most excited about, which will be coming early or mid-October, is that we're going to have a publicly available network performance map on our website, where anybody can go and on his own determine what is the best performing network at any location in Nigeria. And this is based on data submitted by all of us while using our phones for various services. I think first of all, you need to have a certain mindset. You need to condition your mind. As you're taking up this role, you need to look at it purely as for your contribution to nation building. Don't look at it as a reward. Don't look at it as an opportunity for personal to promote your personal interest. You should look at it as your contribution to nation building. That's number one. Number two, you should come in with the mindset of transparency and accountability. And you should also come in with the mindset that this is not going to be an easy journey. In institutions like ours, where we have to balance the interests of three stakeholders, the private sector, consumers, and the government, you have to you have to face up with the fact that you're going to be balancing very delicate relationships, but you have to be bold and you have to be honest with yourself through this journey, and you have to ensure that during those difficult times you're able to put the facts on the table, recognize that the policymakers are very important, and ensure that you are able to balance their interests, but also to ensure that your mandate is being delivered. Because whatever you do, if you do not deliver on your core mandate, then it's a failure.